Laura, will you marry me?
Wow, a lover and a fighter. How romantic. Hello, 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 and welcome back to A History of Caged Violence, the web series that shines a light on the dark days of MMA. I am the J-Shot, the guy who watches early UFC events, takes the worst parts out of context, and sneers at them through 25 years of hindsight, hopefully for your amusement. Today we're on our way to Detroit for UFC 9, also known as Motor City Madness. That's it, that's the title.
Welcome to the ultimate finishing school.
The Open appears very much the same as the last few, perhaps even all of them so far. But make no mistake, just when you think you have all the MMAs, the UFC changes the cues. Sure, it's the first time we get pre-show interviews, from an actual dressing room and everything, so legit. But the big change is the event format itself. Tournament? We don't need no stinking tournament, just 6 single fights, please. It's the first time they've strayed away from the bracket system that they've always been known for. Weird, right? Imagine if, say, Mortal Kombat did that. Oh, wait. And if you're thinking that means there's no need for alternates, well, let's not get ahead of ourselves just yet, okay? The opening package sets up an all-Canadian tilt between Big Daddy Gary Goodridge and Dangerous Dave Beneteau. But old Davey B broke his hand in training just hours before the event, so Mark Schultz, an Olympic gold medalist in wrestling, is going to make his debut on extremely short notice against the arm wrestling god. The balls on that guy. The King of the Streets was supposed to be here too, but instead, Don Fry will tackle another Brazilian import, Omri Batech. Yes, it would seem that you can take the tournament out of the event, but you can't take the fighters getting taken out of their fights out of the fight card, just like the ancient proverb says. Now, Bruce Beck says off the top that the UFC stands firm amidst the controversy. This in reference to the mounting criticism the organization has been seeing, including the human cockfighting label that the late Senator John McCain slapped on the sport. But what he doesn't say is how just hours before they went to air, a legal battle was being fought in the Detroit court system, which forced them to modify their rules. At no point did they mention this when prepping the fans with the ways to win, promoting their own brand spanking new website with all the lastest UFC info, or even pumping their own internet poll.
Don't forget to vote on whether or not women should be allowed to compete in the UFC.
So at 4:30 that afternoon, the UFC promised that there would be absolutely not even one closed fist punch thrown the entire night. Almost exactly like a kid assuring his parents they'd go to bed on time if they let his friend sleep over, this promise wasn't even worth the paper it was written on, provided they even bothered to write it down. But the show must go on, so bring out the first 2 fighters and let's see how well they adapt to the now strictly enforced rules. You may remember these two from the even earlier days of the UFC. Zane Frazier is back after unsuccessfully taking on MMA's version of the absorbing man, Kevin Rozier, in UFC 1. And Cal Worsham might look a bit different, but he's the same guy who was stopped by Big Paul Varlins in UFC 6. 2 tough guys back to avenge a loss who, other than their height, are
virtually identical.
Frazier comes out first, sporting a look in 1996 that wouldn't catch on till 2020. He's said to be a powerful striker with fast footwork, but his stamina is a question. I've got a question for you. What kind of business are you here to take care of, Zane?
Now I'm back here in UFC number 9 to take care of some serious business.
That serious business makes his way to the octagon with team in tow. You remember the Gracie train? Perhaps this more horizontal version is the Worsham wagon. At least I'm calling it that. Feel free to do the same. A powerful striker with BJJ experience who can be cautious, but probably doesn't need to be because he can indeed take a punch. Not that anybody will be doing that tonight, of course.
There are no weight classes, no rounds, no timeouts. Are you ready, Detroit?
Who are you and what have you done with the G-Man? Rich Goings finally seems like he's figured out this whole ring announcing thing. I knew you had it in ya. When the fight starts, these two strikers throw a lot of fakes and feints. Frazier lands a knee but is soon taken down by California Cal, who looks like he knows what he's doing on the ground. He tries to use headbutts, much to the chagrin of Big John, who also reminds him to keep his hands open when striking. It isn't long before the oh-so-illegal strikes stack up, and Big Zane gets to tapping. Worsham looks beefed up and more comfortable in the octagon. He calls for a shot at the super fight because he's 1-1, which is one whole more win than Chemo was when he got his. It's logic that cannot be argued against. And I don't know about you, but I can't wait to see where this 32-year-old's career goes from here.
You beat Dexy's Midnight Runners.
Well, you haven't heard the last of them.
A video package then explains that while North Americans are pretty new to this whole punchy, kicky, chokey business, Brazilians are taught all of it from birth, so good friggin' luck to anybody not from that country. Kudos to the UFC for not just feeding some young American with no experience to one. Oh wait. Rafael Carino, 6'8" and weighing a deuce and a half, stepping into the octagon against Matt Anderson, who hails from the same town as UFC 3's very deserving winner, Steve Jenham. He comes highly touted as a high school wrestler and bare-knuckle fighter with a record of 1-0. But make no mistake, the game changer here is certainly that he comes from the very training center that produced UFC 2 sacrificial lamb, Scott Morris. What could go wrong for this well-rounded fighter who's yet to learn how to clinch on his feet and is also vulnerable on his back? Your guess as to what well-rounded meant back then is as good as mine. Big blanks on those now fundamental MMA skills isn't exactly ideal when you're up against any Brazilian, let alone one who is as big as they say he is, or at least close to it.
I question 6'8", 250 pounds. I'm a heavyweight. He doesn't look that big.
Be sure not to blink because Carino will shoot immediately. And his never-been-hit streak should be safe tonight since no one is throwing any punches anyway. Yep, fists and hair tweezers. Two things that have never been near his face.
My name's
I doubt it'll shock anyone to hear that Carino shoots right away and gets the takedown, putting the young Anderson on his back, who pulls guard. Batech mentions Carino is staying calm and waiting for his opportunity, and even chuckles at the fact that Anderson is looking to his coach for advice while in the cage. What a concept! Earthquake's big break comes about 5 minutes in when McCarthy stops it after seeing enough of those open-handed slaps that were so popular on the night land on the young fighter. Speaking of, the Dragon then indicates these open-handed shots might be part of a new wave of UFC techniques, to which no one responds with, yeah, or they just don't want to get fined.
The fighters are learning that if they just keep punching the skull, they're breaking their hands.
We now go live to Dave Beneteau, who broke his hand in training the day before by punching the ground.
Once again, things that could have been brought to my attention yesterday!
This next fight actually deserves way more attention than it's gotten in the over 25 years since it took place. Mark Schultz won wrestling gold at the 1984 Olympics in the 82 kilogram division, while his brother Dave did the same in the 74 kilogram weight class. Not to get too far off topic here, but fun fact, our boy Batech won the 100 plus kilogram division that year. I recommend anyone who doesn't know the story to check out the book or movie entitled Foxcatcher to learn about the tragic death of Dave Schultz at the hands of the man who'd been funding several high-level athletes' careers, the Schultz brothers included. UFC 9 was just mere months after Mark lost his brother in a completely senseless murder, and with no prior mixed martial arts matches, into the octagon he went. Not only that, he's going to be across the octagon from Big Daddy Gary Goodridge, a man who rivals Schultz's wrestling skills, at least in the arm department.
One of the great arm wrestlers in the world, recently beat 1,000 men in a row.
Beck says it with a lot more confidence this time around, so you know it's true. Schultz comes out with a straight up and down style reminiscent of the Machida era, but it's only seconds before he shoots for a takedown and really plants Big Daddy on his back. Much like Severn, he isn't incredibly active from the top, but he controls his opponent and shows just how beneficial a world-class wrestling background is in MMA. Even when Big John stands them up, he easily scores another takedown and returns to dominating the bigger fighter, even opening a cut that requires a look from the ringside dock. At that point, we get a shot of Beneteau coaching his friend, training partner, and stand-in from outside the cage. Goodridge is cleared to continue, but he's obviously worse for wear and couldn't stop a Schultz takedown when he was fresh. Back to the mat they go, where Schultz employs some ground and pound until the time limit expires.
Who is in the octagon? There's somebody in the octagon. They got rid of him as a photographer. He must have thought the fight was over.
Originally, it was headed for overtime, but that changed after the doctors took a look at Big Daddy's cuts. So they bring back the photographers and chat with the winner, who says his brother Dave was his motivation and that he had very little preparation rather than none at all. Batech asks if he'll come back to the UFC in the future, and Schultz says we'll see. But he would retire with a 1-0 record and never return. Now past the halfway mark, they let fans know the next event will bring back the tournament format that makes oh so much sense. They also promote their sweet training tapes and even pancrase. But there's more fights, so let's get back to the action. UFC 7 veteran Mark Hall has a big challenge in front of him. He's taking on Kitao, a 6'7", near 400-pound sumo wrestler making his debut in the octagon. Mobility is certainly a question, but he stalks Hall pretty well, as he literally runs from the much bigger man. Once Kitao gets his hands on Hall, you'd assume it's all over. And it is, but not for the reason you'd think. Kitao's nose is shattered. What happened, you may ask? Can we get a replay? Oh, hi, Ken. Right, okay, here it is. No, that's just the takedown. Either way, Hall says in the interview he caught him with a right hand. And he also says this.
Laura, will you marry me?
Wow, a lover and a fighter. How romantic. To get fans as rabid as possible for the upcoming super fight, they show Shamrock's first UFC fight in its entirety, complete with Bill Superfoot Wallace commentary.
Ken is wearing the very simple swimming trunks just so you can't grab anything. And he looks pretty good in his swimming trunks too.
Wow, they must have hated having to show that. But it gets the point across that as long as the octagon has been much more than just a geometric shape, so too has Shamrock been much more than just a milkshake you can get at McDonald's once a year. Gone are the days of easily avoided errors. Mostly. Replaced by things like fancy polls on the World Wide Web. In this case, where fans came back with a 92% yes vote on whether or not women should be allowed to compete in the octagon.
When are we going to see women in the UFC, man?
Never.
When they take questions from the fans who've dialed up the internet, Don the Dragon is adamant. He would have stepped into the cage during his fighting days.
I'm in negotiations right now with a possible fight at the UFC.
Oh man, we will definitely stay tuned for that fight. Oh wait.
Don Fry will be the first to make his way. No, it's Henri Batech.
Beck clues in when he notices the lack of a mustache, just as we're shown some graphics that might have been made by Superfoot himself.
Very strong.
As the fight starts, Beck labels the reigning champ as Magnum UFC. Okay, that's pretty good, not gonna lie. But you know what else is good? Batech, who is aggressive right from the jump. He tries to get Fry off his feet and keeps swinging while he's working for it. The two exchange strikes while grappling, and Fry eventually ends up on top. Batech fights his way back to his feet and shows a lot of heart, standing in front of the Predator and eating knees and punches that couldn't have felt too good. After some ground and pound, McCarthy pauses the action and brings in Sergeant Slaughter to look at the cuts on Batech's head. He's cleared to go back in, but it's more of the same. Fry on top raining down short but stiff shots on the Brazilian, who's struggling to stay in it. The Dragon says these strikes are adding up and explains how effective they can be by using a line that sounds like something Tank Abbott would say when he's on a date.
All you need is 3 inches.
Elbows to the spine, knees to the crown of the head. McCarthy has seen enough, and the Predator remains undefeated in the octagon and keeps all the perks that come with it.
Well, you know, he gets free pizza at Pizza Hut because they all know him now.
In his post-fight interview, Fry says he'd like to fight one of the Gracies, introduces his training partners, including his big brother.
He used to beat me like a redheaded stepchild and taught me how to take a punch.
Gingers have toes.
And generally is just fawned over by Batech. Time for the super fight, but not before we hawk some sweet merch. Call now. Who isn't excited for this matchup? Two of the UFC's best grapplers about to meet in the cage. It's also possible Severn's upped his kicking game since we last saw him, considering the team he's surrounded by.
Do you think anybody wants a roundhouse kick to the face while I'm wearing these bad boys?
Shamrock dispatched Severn quickly in the past, but that was then and this is now. Speaking of...
When future generations study the early days of the UFC, it's a sure bet they'll be studying this man.
Accurate. Okay, without any further delay, let's get this instant classic started. I can't wait to see these guys go at it. All right, here we go. Any minute now.
Fans don't know what to do. These are the two best fighters maybe right now in the UFC.
Strategies. Maintain your poise. Don't break.
The fans expressed their disappointment early on as the two just circle around the octagon with virtually no action. It's so slow to get going, the commentators are forced to address it.
And the longer you go like this, guys, I think the harder it is to engage.
At least that's what I tell my girlfriend, who's put in a solid 10 years and still doesn't have a ring to show for it. About 10 minutes in, Big John stops it to remind them they're indeed in a fight. Severn said after that he responded by telling him if he wanted to make it a triangle death match, his words, then McCarthy should take off his shirt and put up his dukes. Okay, you gotta admit, that would have been pretty cool. But not much really changes. And this snooze fest rolls on.
I can't figure out the moves.
As the fight gets longer, you become more cautious. Your time wanes.
So they can't just be sitting back expecting the judges to decide this.
So it was Severn who went in on the leg of Shamrock. Nothing came out of it.
I said this was too close to call prior to the fight. Can we have a draw?
No, we
with
can't.
The judge?
They have to vote one way or another. And something's been thrown into the octagon. That's not good.
Well, I just got hit by a cigar butt.
And there goes Severn in on a leg. Severn with the reversal.
Oh gosh, I can't believe that.
Strength and power. A minute to go in regulation. There's the horn. It's over.
Perhaps due to miles traveled, Severn is named the winner on 2 judges' scorecards, and just like that, there's a new super fight champion, I guess. Taking a page out of his pal Don Fry's book, he challenges Royce Gracie to fight him at the next event. Will we get that triangle death match after all? Tune in next time to find out. UFC 9 wasn't without its highlights. The fighters they brought in were all octagon savvy and provided some good action, which more than made up for the super flop. As for that train wreck, Severn maintained his game plan was to sit and wait for Shamrock, so as not to get countered. And since Shamrock's game plan was to follow the no closed fist striking rule, what was expected to be a slobber knocker instead turned out to be a stalemate. Big John did his best to enforce the rule that he was told ahead of time wouldn't actually result in any fines. Didn't catch it? Check it out.
Using some headbutts.
Too much damage, Dragon, for the...
Open the head!
Those are the most effective.
Open the head! Open the head!
From his upper body. That was a tough shot right there. Right off of him in the mounted position.
Open the head! Open the head! Open the head! Open the head!
Shen Fry lands the right hand.
Taking out, recuperate fast.
Open the head!
These guys have spent
With a right
down there wrapped up.
Get some punishment.
Without a doubt, person to make a mistake. There's a mistake.
Look out, he's in the mount.
Open hands!
He's trying to end it. Schultz is trying to end
Open
it.
hands!
So after building some real momentum over the last few events, UFC 9 was indeed madness in the Motor City. The sport with no rules now has a really restrictive one. And the tournament format they were known for is gone with no explanation. You'd have to think that after all those shenanigans, some fans decided right then and there that they weren't even going to bother with UFC 10. But we are, so hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and we will see you right here next time on A History of Caged Violence. All the best.